Hello and welcome to the Voice of the New Human. My name's Kelly Attwood, and today we have a very special lady who is coming in to speak with us. She's not only a lovely lady, she also has a very science-based background, which interests me. Her name's Mary Rodwell, and Mary is also known as the Alien Woman. She is the principal of ACERN, also known as the Australian Close Encounters Network. She is also the author of 2 books, one of which I have read, which I'll see if I can slide it in there to show you all. That's The New Human. That's better. The New Human, which helped me quite a lot with my children. So I advise parents who, have issues with their starseed children to buy that book for sure. It was very helpful. Mary's also a globally renowned speaker, and she's also a counsellor and clinical hypnotherapist. So on that note, as an introduction, Mary, I won't go too much further, keep it simple, and I'm just going to say hello and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. It's lovely to be on the show with you. And I know this is a very significant one for you, being the very first. So that's wonderful.
It is, and we were just saying before, it's on an unusual date as well, the 2nd of the 2nd, 2022. I have no idea what the significance of that is, but if there's any numerologists out there that would like to take a stab at it, they're more than welcome to put it in the comments under the YouTube area there. So I thought, you were mentioning before that a lot is going on at the moment, Mary. So I think we'll just take off from our general conversation, what your thoughts are around what's significant right now in the world for you and the work that you do.
Well, it's a very good question. And I think certainly the whole globe has been rattled by the chaos that we're experiencing now on multiple levels. One of the things that I've been saying with all of that and how challenging it's been for many, many people is that it's been an amazing opportunity for many people to reappraise their lives and reappraise what is important in their lives as well. There's nothing more confronting than your mortality. And I think a lot of people have been faced with that. And with it is what's really important. And I think it's given people a new way of looking at their lives, and they've had to stop and they've had to reappraise it and have to decide what's important in their lives. And this has led to what many are calling, a great awakening of people. And that is certainly echoed in the work, my work, because, I've always been pretty busy anyway, but now keeping up has been really challenging for me because of so many are wanting to explore what this means from that other level of their spirituality.
And what other level are you talking about? Are we talking about the multi-dimensional level?
That's certainly been what's been going on for many, is that there's that sense of opening up to more awareness, their intuition, their sensing, their knowing, their feeling. Some of them may sense they're having communications or feeling energies or balls of light and what have you, and feeling that in some way is connected to them. So often they've asked me and said, look, what do I do with this? How do I understand it? How do I work with it? How do I expand with it? Because they're feeling that expansion. In fact, there were a lot of people that wrote to me that had a similar thing happen after 2012, interesting, and said it was 2012 that this started happening for me. There's been a similar thing about, the last couple of years, is the same kind of explanation that somehow they've been catapulted into greater awareness.
That's what I was going to say, a greater awareness coming through for these people. And am I to assume that they're mainly the younger ones that are still coming to you these days? Because in the book, it's mainly younger children, and obviously there's some adults with these experiences as well, but that tends to be your specialty.
It's actually all age groups that what's interesting with the older generations is that they I've been very aware how they've been shut down as a child, and it wasn't okay to say that you had sort of spirits, or you were aware of other realities and what have you, because in the older generations there was a great deal of criticism or judgment that you couldn't experience these things. So to open up now is scary for many of them. They may be in their 60s or 70s or even 80s and saying, you know, I've never been able to talk about it. I've never felt safe. And yet this is all going on. And I, you know, before something happens to me, I'd like to understand more of what my life has meant. What does this mean in my life? So it's not just the children. The children and the young adults seem to be a lot more comfortable and less threatened by their awareness. It's almost, and I think part of that is due to the sense that on this planet we've got a far more openness than there's ever been to these this awareness and what have you. Whereas in, you know, other generations, there was many things that limited that because of the judgment that they were received with.
I think I'm trying to remember his name now, but the Canadian Minister of Defence, I think he's now well into his 90s, and he disclosed something many years ago in a formal setting that we are not alone, and it's about time that America came out and told, you know, the community about, you know, what's really going on, and that we do have ET neighbours. So, and I think recently there was another general that came out and said something similar as well. So I think that these things are now helping us expand our minds and have a sense of okayness to come out of the closet, so to speak. I think you've called it the alien closet in the past, or the ET closet.
Well, I call it the space closet. And
the space closet.
Honorable Paul Hellyer, who I actually had lunch with in Hawaii many years ago. And it was very amazing to me, this former Defence Minister of Canada had actually got the courage and the confidence, even this was in 2006 when I met him, to actually say that, you know, he'd been absolutely convinced of its reality, that we are being visited by various intelligences, and it is time for the governments to own it. And of course, there's been many other disclosures now from some of those within those, you know, the military and what have you, that have come out and spoken about this. But it's still fringe as far as the mainstream are considered, although they've released the Pentagon Papers where it's supposed to be great disclosure last year or the year before. I think it's last year. But it's still just saying, well, there's strange vehicles in the sky, but we don't actually know what they are or where they're from. And that, I'm afraid, is a big fat
flying tic tacs, and yes.
And I've actually met a couple of the crew that saw the tic tacs off San Francisco. I met them a couple of years ago at a UFO conference, and one of them, the guy in the radar, Kevin, lovely lad, we had a chance to chat over a few hours because they were in the same place as I was, and saying that it had changed his life. The fact that they saw these vehicles, and there were hundreds of them doing things that no other vehicle should ever do. And he said that lots of things had happened for him since. He'd opened up, he was aware of communication. There was a whole range of things that went with that. And I don't think people realize how many people are actually involved with this form of contact. And we're not just talking about a few thousand here or even a few million. I believe there's a great percentage of our planet.
I agree with you, Mary.
People are having these experiences.
For sure. I just had a conversation with a girlfriend a few days ago, and I told her about my experiences, and she said, yeah, I've had one too. And my mother, we lived on a farm. We had experiences all the time. I said, why didn't you tell me? Because we're too afraid to talk about our experiences through fear of being judged or being thought of as being crazy. So, you know, we just keep it quiet. But I think, you know, it's okay to come out of a closet and talk about these things now. I know my son's had experiences which were just beautiful. I don't mind sharing them here. He doesn't mind me sharing this one. When he was younger, he used to go out. He's an unusual boy. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd just leave the house. I had no control of it. He'd sneak out as a young teenager, and he'd go collecting insects. That was his hobby, and bring them home to put in his cage. And on this particular occasion, there was a strange man on our street, and he had what my son said looked like a rake, and he got frightened. And so he ran behind a fence, and when this person was gone, he jumped out the back and went up a back street where there's bush. And as he walked along, he looked to his left, and in the bush, he said he just saw all of these orbs everywhere. And I said, you know what, hun? You know, my gut feeling was that was his star family watching over him, because he did see something that was very unsavory. So they're often always there looking out for us, aren't they?
And it's very interesting that you bring in that they can come in the form of an orb of light.
Yes.
There are many people that interact with these orbs, and you've got photographs and video now where you see these orbs appearing and disappearing and what have you. And there's no question that they respond to consciousness and to communication or what have you. And the reason that I say to people that I believe many of them are spirits or these intelligences out of body is because several of those that I've talked to and I've written about have said when they leave their body, they leave as a ball of light. So when you're out of body, you're not in your necessarily having a human form. You're actually just this orb of, you know, of essence of your soul or spirit or whatever. And that's how we travel. That's how we travel out of body often.
And through the dimensions as that ball of light.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
That's right.
Fascinating. Well, I was just going to ask you a question about starseeds and their frequency. They've come incarnated onto the planet in bigger numbers since the 1990s. I don't know what the numbers are. You might be more au fait with that. But I'm wondering, do you think that this is going to keep increasing with these high frequency souls coming through? And to what, I mean, I've heard stories that, well, they'll keep coming in, but then they'll stop at a certain time when human consciousness has expanded at a certain rate for us all then to move into this new earth, as they talk about.
Well, I haven't heard about it being limited at any point. Certainly that's not something that I've heard. What I have heard is certainly that there are many souls from various parts of galaxies, interdimensionally or what have you, that are coming in with certain skills from all those places to assist this planet with the transition. Now, how many are needed for that? How many, you know, I don't know whether there is a limit to that or whatever, or whether or not it will be as that transition happens. But then again, are they going to want to be in that new environment and higher frequency themselves? Others may come to be part of that new frequency as well and continue to assist as we evolve and grow in that new frequency. So for me, it's about a soul contract. Many of those that I've talked to, when you ask, often it may be as they're connecting to their non-human team, as I call it, or it may be that in hypnosis, you say to them, have you on any level agreed to come to this planet? And they'll say, yes, before I came here, and I've come in with this mandate. And the children, as you know, in my book, have mentioned that they knew, many of them have known that they've come in with a particular role to play.
Yeah.
One young man of 10 explaining that he came in from another planet, and he said he was a center seed. In other words, he was coming to help connect to the center of the planet and to deal with all the pollution. There are others that have come in that have said that one 17-year-old in New Zealand said he's an ambassador from Arcturus and he's come to help with the ecology, create a new environment, a new habitat that is in harmony with the planet. So many of them do have a sense of their role to play. the older star seeds and older generations say, Mary, they'll come to me and say, Mary, I know I've got a mission. I know I've got something to do. And they'll say to me, but I don't know what it is yet.
I have experienced that as well. I'm trying to mentor a young man at the moment. He's 22 and he's such a little star seed. He's so cute. And I call him an indigo, I suppose, but this person's so lost and he's looking for purpose. And that was actually a question I was going to ask you today, whether you're experiencing this with youth. You know, I love working with youth, and you know, so on one level, maybe the roles haven't been established just yet for these guys. Maybe it's them that has to create it in the future. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that? Or maybe the technology's not here yet for them.
There may be some of that, but my feeling is, whenever I've sort of been asking about this, is it's often about timing. It's about, you'll know when the time is ready for you to know, because sometimes it can get in the way of what you're doing right now. Because if it is sometime in the future, whether even it's the near future, it may be that you need to focus on what you're doing right now and allow that time to come when that awareness will come to you. Because sometimes it's a little bit, as it was described to me, it's a little bit like knowing you're going to go and live in another country for the rest of your life, but you've still got 6 months in dear old Australia, for example. Yeah. It's very hard to be motivated with your 6 months you've got left here when you know that you're really not going to be here anymore because you're going to go to this other place. So I think in a way it's to keep us centered, it's to keep us in the now, and to also know, and when people say to me, you know, I don't want to mess it up, and I don't want to miss my mission. And I always say to them, you know, that the soul isn't going to let you miss the bus. So when it's time, you will know, even if they have to put you against the wall and, you know, give you a slap, they'll make sure that you know when the time comes. And I think it is about trusting that, trusting when that's time for you. And that's a hard one, because we're always wanting to know, what about next week? What about next year? What about whatever? And many times we're all told to be in the now.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I often drawn this for people, like you know, you've got your visualization of a mountain, and there's the pathway that you can go up, and you can take the pathway which goes wide, and you keep getting knocked off your perch, and you fall, and it hurts, and it's not smooth sailing. But when you're in touch with your soul and you listen to the soul rather than your ego or the part that, you know, is quite fearful, that it's a much smoother sailing climb to where you need to go. I don't like to say to the top, but just, you know, to where the jewels are, let's say, where you feel, you know, that's your sense of purpose.
And looking at my own life, I don't think I would have understood where I am now 40 years ago when I was a nurse and a midwife. And if you'd said to me, Mary, you know, in 40 years time, you'd be traveling the world and talking about, you know, aliens and ETs and starseeds, I would have probably sent you to the nearest psychiatrist. So, you know what I mean? It's for all of us, we're evolving into new awareness the whole time. And what was normal for us some time ago may not be now, or we've normalized something with that expansion. And we're all growing as we understand more and more. So it isn't about having the whole package, coming in with the whole package. It's about an adventure, the soul adventure that is, you know, experiencing not knowing, so that they can be totally in the experience rather than saying, well, I know this is really only a game, a bit of a drama I've created to give the soul a bit of an, you know, an interesting experience. Nobody's going to try hard. Nobody's going to get anything from that.
You won't wake up.
Yeah. So we wake up when it's time, and there's new challenges with that, because when you wake up, then you're going against the tide often of the programming of this planet. And that requires courage. It requires, and you've already said, and I really understand, to come out publicly and say, this is my experience. It can be really confronting, particularly if people have seen you in one particular way. and now they're going to see you in this other way, and how are they going to judge me now? Are they going to, are they going to accept me or not accept me? And we are really in a lot of peer pressure a lot of the time to fit into the box, not step out of it. So, and we're seeing that even with the duality we're getting at the moment with different belief systems around what's happening on the planet right now. We've got, this conflict of different beliefs and understanding, and it's teaching us we have to be very loving, very supportive, very accepting of where people are at.
Yeah, but we're all growing. It doesn't matter what side of the equation you're on. We're all growing. I've done a lot of work on myself over the last 30 years, but I can tell you the amount of work I've done in the last 12 months to 24 months, relative to unconditional love. And sometimes we think that we're very good with empathy and compassion, but it then takes you to another level. You can always go to a deeper level and a deeper level, and just watching those judgments and the critique coming up and noticing and wow, and my children help me with that as well. They're my biggest teachers, I have to say, because on some level, their souls are more advanced than mine. I just say, yep, you guys are my teachers. Thank you very much. It's hard work, having children like these, but at the end of the day, they have made me grow so much. And you probably get that from a lot of the parents that you talk to, the same experience. I was going to ask you, one of my children finds it very difficult being in the human body. And I know that's quite common with these new humans coming through, because a lot of the souls may not have had the experience in a physical 3D body like this. What do you normally advise them to help them?
Well, understanding that they've come from different forms, different frequencies, different awareness. I mean, and that is as vast as you can possibly imagine. So coming into a human body, to give you an example of an account that I had of a lady who was around my generation, she reminded me of her own experience, which was that when she remembers distinctly being on a cylindrical craft, I think she said she was something like 8 or 9 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, everything was telepathic. And she said, and of course, food was light. She said, Mary, I found myself in a 3-year-old girl's body. I'm having to learn how to talk, and I'm having to learn how to eat. And she said, it was so traumatic for me. It took me quite a while to accept this form and to work with it. And she actually explained that regularly she goes back to that craft and she debriefs with her family, star family. But the trauma of being in a physical body after being, what she was, and again, some of them only have known themselves as energy or having a light body or whatever. And it's almost, and I've made a joke about this a few times, where some people say, Mary, I just want to go home, don't want to be here, don't like it, they're primitive, all those kinds of things.
I have to concur there, because while I won't talk about my experience this time around, I will say that the reason why they came to me was because that was how I was feeling. I wanted to go home. I'd had enough of what was going on around me, and at that stage, this was 5 years ago, while I would never check out or do anything to myself, I was just feeling very futile in the world, and probably I lost my passion and purpose in life at that stage for different things that were going on in my load. But this experience occurred, and it was just one of the most wonderful things that could ever have happened to me, and I'll never forget it. And that's what actually gives me purpose today with what I'm doing here with you and on this channel, because I know it's a true reality. And I've experienced it firsthand. I don't have to read it from a book. So, yeah, and it makes me sad when I see some of the universities publish articles on aliens, and I've got one here actually. This is a Harvard University peer-reviewed study about memory distortion in people reporting abduction by aliens. And it surmises that traumatic events that are unlikely to have occurred, abduction by space aliens. The study's conclusion states that hypnotic suggestibility, depressive symptoms, and schizophrenic features were significant predictors of false recall and false recognition within these people. And that's what I was taught when I went to university as well, to study psychology for a period of time. That was one of the first things they taught us. I thought, wow. And I'd already had some experiences by that age. And what's your opinion about that?
Well, I think it's disgusting. And I will tell you for why. Because Professor of Psychiatry, Dr. John Mack, wrote the book Abduction before he wrote the second one. And he was a skeptic, and he was presented with people that had experiences. And I think he did over 100 cases, and he did hypnosis with them. He did all the psychological testing, and he said they were all perfectly sane, but there was no doubt in his mind they'd had what was for them a very real experience. And he was convinced that it was real and that they was experiencing multidimensional experiences. And he went to write Passport to the Cosmos, which was expanding on more of the information that those that had experiences told him. And he was completely convinced of its reality. Now, many of us, and we've done hundreds, I mean, I've worked with over 3,500 individuals from all over the globe, all belief systems, all cultures, all professions. Doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or whether you're a Christian or whether you're a Sikh or whatever it is. The similarities and patterns when you have an encounter, you may interpret it in your religious terms. For example, someone who's very Christian may see a being that they interpret as an angel, where someone else will call it a light being. Yes. It's exactly the same, but often it's interpreted through that belief system that they have. But there is no doubt that it has literally a cosmic change in their reality. You don't have a complete change in the way you think, behavior, and believe from a fantasy. And where they say that there's some mental aberration and what have, the reason many people end up in hospital is because it's been diagnosed as schizophrenia or some other thing, or because they've simply not been believed ever. And so that creates a reality conflict where, well, what is real? If this isn't real, what does it mean? I must be crazy. Yeah. And so this whole thing has been, to me, one of the most frustrating things that I've dealt with in terms of the truth embargo, because we've had this truth embargo of the reality of being visited all through the centuries. We know that the images will tell us. You look at cave drawings, you look at medieval paintings, you look at it. They've been visiting forever, and the problem has been that, particularly in Western society, we have a model of psychology that takes on really just a material Cartesian framework, which says anything out of our physical body isn't real. Anything we experience, intuition, knowing, sensing, clairvoyance, all of that intuitive side isn't real, because unless it's our five senses, you can't trust it. And we're the only, it's Western society that has created that inaccurate model of humanity, leaving out what is now being studied as consciousness, which is our essence that goes on eternally when we leave this physical container. And so now, the more enlightened of those within my field are looking at this from a consciousness perspective, rather than from the nuts and bolts. Well, we've seen the craft, have enough people seen had the experience. All the other stuff that they experience has been dismissed as fantasy or false memory. And as a hypnotherapist, that really irritates me. Yeah. Because when you do clinical hypnosis, where you are taking somebody to remember an experience, believe me, when they come out of that with whatever it is that memory is, most of them would rather not believe it. And I will say to them, if you could have imagined that, would you have ever imagined it? And they'll say to me, not in a million years would I ever imagine that, or that that was real, or what have you.
Almost
So
like
it's
they're
not
being gaslighted. Do you think that it's like these experiences are being gaslighted by science?
totally.
Yeah. And what about the new science coming through, Mary? I mean, hopefully it will be more supportive. I don't know what's going to happen to the education system over the next 12 months,
Yeah.
but you know, with the advances in quantum physics and other sciences, hopefully, you know, new things will come out, and you know, it will change everything for these people. What are your thoughts?
I think that it will. And one of the recent books that we've done in an organization was one of the organizations I co-founded, which is the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. We did a survey, an academic survey of 600 plus questions, 4,200 people globally. And that's it's called Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligences. And what we discovered was that out of the surveys, one particular important fact was that out of the 4,000, we noticed that 75% of encounters were out of body. Only 25% were physical.
Right.
So that shows you a very important reason why the nuts and bolts of ufology struggled with this, because it isn't quantifiable in the way that they wanted to quantify. You didn't bring back a piece of the craft, for example. But when well, the other thing I want to say here that is significant is that when they were asked about their experiences and how it changed them, now this is really significant. Out of the 4,200 people, 85% said they had a psycho-spiritual transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't have a psycho-spiritual transformation after a fantasy or, you know, a created imagination. And this is how they would find themselves opening up multidimensionally. They would start to get downloads of information. They may start to do unusual artwork. They may bring in these strange scripts or symbols as part of their experience.
Yeah.
They may bring in unique music that they're downloading. Some will download quantum physics, origin of the species. All this information will start to flood through them after their encounters. So if you want to look at the reality of this doesn't happen again after a fantasy. This happens because something very real has happened that has changed their whole way of living. Many will lose materialistic values. They'll go and live more holistically. Some of them become healers. Some of them become energy workers. And many of them have this sense of being connected to all life forms in a completely different way. And it is an amazing thing to actually see, and when it happens. So all of this is what people don't know. There's your evidence right in front of you.
Wonderful. I'm wondering with these, just going back to the new humans coming through. Your daughter's a naturopath, is that right, from recollection? Just on the subject of their needs, we're talking more, you know, becoming more holistic and looking after your needs that way. So you'll see with these people that their diets may change. But from your point of view, to help the new humans coming through, who are usually highly sensitive people, what would be the type of diet or eating plan that they would need to be at their optimal level?
It's a good question. And one of the reasons I wrote The New Human was not just to tell the stories. I was looking at ways that they could help themselves, because we live on a planet where a great deal is not healthy.
Yeah.
We have chemtrails, we have fluoride in the water, we have food that is unhealthy in many cases, unless it's organic or whatever. So in many ways, we're being poisoned. And anyone who's looked into this will see what I mean. This isn't imagination. This is why so many people are sick and have been sick, is because we're not told what's put in our food anymore, and this kind of thing. So it's going back to basics as much as possible if you can, and it's not always easy, but I talk about that. And Dr. Lena Olson, a good friend of mine who is a starseed, and so are all her children, found certain things that they needed, particularly those that were diagnosed as ADHD, for example, that they use more of the vitamin Bs. So often supplements are crucial, particularly to some of the starseeds, because they operate at a higher frequency. They use more of these vitamins and minerals as well. So there's quite there's one chapter where I actually focus on that, with information on how best to support anyone who is a starseed, and particularly for the children, because it's really important you understand that they're vibrating at a different frequency. They need to be out in the fresh air. They need to connect to nature. There's a lot of, but what I would suggest they do, they also listen to what the child says they need, because often a child has this intuitive knowing. There are certain things they're drawn to, and you would know that, being a mum.
I do. I'll give an example, because I've been a health coach as well, and a personal trainer. I've done lots of different things, so I know little bits are about all sorts of different things on a holistic level. And I've tried different types of nutrition for my second son. Everything hurt. When he ate, it hurt. He couldn't process his food. And he couldn't focus at school. He'd fall asleep on the desk. He really didn't make it through school at all. He got to about a year 7 education and could never focus on anything. Even when I took out grains and different things, he is so tired of seeing therapists, or whether it's a nutritionist, a naturopath, a psychologist, you name it. He's gone his own way now, and he's healing himself. And I'm allowing him to do that. I'm hands off now. You know more than me. Go and do it. He worked with paleo, then keto, and then he said, look, my body needs just meat. And he went full meat carnivore, and he started to feel a lot better. So to me, I would never do that. And, for me, I thought, to get healthy, we need to have more greens and, vegetables and these sorts of things. But for some people, it doesn't work that way. So we've just got to work with where our body's at. And that's where metabolic typing can also come into it. One man's poison is another man's food. And one man may need a little amount of carbs, and another one may need, a lot more. So, we need different macronutrient ratios according to our body's biochemistry, and we've got to sense into that. And so I've come to understand that concept, and now I've let him go. So, and he still has problems, but he then works it out, and he's getting clearer and clearer in the mind because of this process. And so it's giving him the ability to start studying again after many years. So it's an amazing experience.
And I think that if we listen, they often do know what they're drawn to. And it may be that your son has had difficulty grounding, and there's nothing like being a carnivore to ground you to this planet, and it may enable him to be more grounded in this reality by that choice. So, we all have our own ideas, but ultimately we've got to realize that, everyone's coming from different places in the galaxy, and they will have different needs and different foods for those frequencies that they are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there, Mary. Just wanted to touch on schools of the future and what your thoughts are on what the new children coming through might need relative to what we have now. And that includes universities as well as primary schools. And yeah, so obviously they're not working for our kids at the moment, particularly for the latter children. It can be very difficult for them to learn in that environment with only a couple of different methods of learning, where there's probably about 60 or 70 methods of learning, which, several of those might be more appropriate for them.
Well, it's a good question. And I think that those that are waking up are looking at new ways to support these very aware children. And I think ultimately we're going to basically have to start again. I was talking to a lady doing a thesis in Dublin who was talking about spiritual children. And she said, with all those people that I'm talking to, the educators, Mary, what would you say to them regarding this new kind of way of teaching? And I said, basically, forget everything you've ever known about education and start again, because these children are coming in with such awareness, knowing and understanding that what we need to do, I believe, is to create an environment that is loving and supporting, but ultimately asking them, what is it they most need to be all that they've come here to be? So you'll have some coming in as wanting to empaths, healers. You'll have others that are wanting to work with the ecology. They will know what they need to be, helped with. I think our job as the nurturers and, to support them and keep them healthy is to provide the foods that they need and all the practical material things, because there's still the emotional child in there, along with the very aware soul. So it's a matter of really tuning into that. And many of those that have picked mums and dads that are intuitive or whatever, that will allow them to say, well, this is for me, this is what I'm drawn to. And it sounds like you did that with your son. You basically said, you know what you need. How can we facilitate that? How can we
frontal of family members, that's for sure, I'd say. I come from a very rigid upbringing, sort of very Catholic, Roman Catholic, and brought up, sort of a convent Catholic upbringing. So I've really had to break away from everybody in order to bring them up the way that I feel would help them to grow, and to get them on their own path rather than being confined and programmed. So I spent years programming myself, and I wanted to offer that as a gift to them so that they could grow at their own rate and go in the direction that they really wanted to go, rather than me trying to guide them where I feel they need to go. I really feel that they have the inner wisdom to do that. So, yeah. Look, Mary, thank you so much for talking to me today about this subject. It's been fantastic. I'm just wondering, how do people get hold of you if they'd like to have a session with you or be put under hypnosis? Do they need to come in person, or can it be done over Skype or Zoom?
Good question. I do sessions over Skype and Zoom, or they can come and see me where I live. All of those options are available. And of course, I do counseling as well. Really, there's lots of different ways they can approach me, emails on top of that. So go to my website. You can Google me. Lots of presentations are actually on YouTube as well as this one. So that, there shouldn't be any difficulty finding me one way or another.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary. All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you.